Okay, good afternoon all. Um, I our discussion will start 5 minutes. Yes.
Hello, Regina. I think there's something wrong with the connection, or it's this way.
Oh, okay.
Your voice is like stopping on my screen.
Okay. I'm so sorry for the bad connection. I repeat again. Good afternoon for all the participants of today's event from Pusatdim UKSW, because we will still be wait for another participants. Maybe we will start our discussion 5 minutes more. Yes. Kak Jessie, where are you? Where are you now?
In my mother-in-law house. How are you?
Oh, really good. How about you?
I'm great, thank you. You are in your last year, right? If I'm not mistaken. It is,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, good luck.
Okay, all the participants, for your information, our discussion for today is also being streamed in UKSW live events in YouTube. You can share the link to another fellow academics too. Okay, I think we will start. our discussion. Shalom. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Kak Petsi Jesse Ismoyo, our speaker for today. Good afternoon, the Honorable Sir and Madam lecturers from Universitas Kristen Satya Wacana and the other universities. Good afternoon to my beloved undergraduate and graduate students from Universitas Kristen Satya Wacana and the other universities. And good afternoon for all of the participants of today's events. Welcome to Pusapdem UKSW Monthly Seminar with today's topic, Indigenous Queer in Contestation, a note from Fieldwork in South Sulawesi, held by Pusat Studi Agama Pluralisme dan Demokrasi Universitas Kristen Satya Wacana, or Pusapdem UKSW. So first of all, we must give thanks to our Almighty God because of His blessings. We can come here today and discuss our very interesting and our discussion for today will be held during well. So Kak Jessie will be present with English language, but it's okay if you in question and answer session will give a response or give a question with bahasa Indonesia. It's very okay. So, okay. For the introduction, maybe if you ever heard about Bugis, a major ethnic from South Sulawesi, that they are recognized 5 genders in their society. There are Orwane, Makunrai, Chalalai, Chalabai, and Bisu. And the last one, Bisu, maybe it's very, very interesting to discuss because Bisu is androgynous shamans or community priests in Bugis. And all the 5 genders is live coexist harmoniously in their society. Maybe if you ever heard about this discussion will be very interesting for you. And now, our speaker for today is actually have a field work with that topic from South Sulawesi. So Kak Jessie, and then she will share it to us for this afternoon. And for your information, Kak Jessie is a researcher of Pusapdem UKSW, and she is also a PhD candidate of Indonesian Consortium for Religion Studies in Universitas Gadjah Mada. So, without any further ado, we will start our discussion. Kak Jessie, the time is yours.
Thank you, Regina, for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time to attend Pusapdem monthly discussions today. It is actually an honor for me to be able presenting my professional findings here today. And I really, really hope that I can get insightful insights from all of you as I am still in the ongoing process of this research. So if you have questions, insight, critics, comment, please, all are welcomes. Please to do so. So as Regina also mentioned, since it is an English forum, I have to apologize that I have to deliver the presentation in English because there's acquaintance also from all over the place, and English seems to be quite convenient language in that matter. But please feel free to use Bahasa Indonesia in later question and answer session, as Regina and I will try our best to be interpreter dadakan if needed. So let me share my screen first. Okay. Wait a second. Okay. Can anybody see all right? Okay. Is it okay? Or is there a problem with sharing screen? Okay, it's okay. Okay, fine. Okay, Maybe a little story back there. So a few days back, I've just had my first dissertation promotion club, as it is known as a Seminar Hasil Satu. And in that forum, Pak Isa Latu, as a Ketua Pusat Studi Agama, Pluralisme, and Demokrasi, asked me an intriguing question. It is actually very intriguing question. He said that in your research, is it whether all of it a negotiation, or is it actually a contestation? Then from that intriguing question, it led me to further thinking on the possibility of their embodied resistance can become contestations in regards to the study of gender, religions, and spirituality. And that again, I'm still working on hardly. So Regina already introduced me, but let me speak it briefly. I'm also a lecturer in international relations study program, a researcher in Pusapdem, and a PhD candidate in Indonesian Consortium for Religious Study in Gajah Mada Graduate School. And now today I'm trying my best to deliver in within 20 minutes or less about my fieldwork journey. In the past year, as it is a part of my dissertation project. So what I have today is titled Indigenous Queer in Contestation, a note from Fieldwork in South Sulawesi. So here's an outline of today's session. So I'm gonna start with the various definition, including the definition of queer, why I choose the term queer here, and how the third gender entangled with the colonialism that later affected our gender understanding, that shifted our gender understanding. And following with the story from the field, I try to retell the story from the field that I've been spent on this year. And also lastly, I try to capture the experience and wrap it out visually. So everyone in this forum can get a glimpse of illustration, how is it be like living with the Bisu community. Okay, I think it is important to begin. Why the term queer? What is actually queer? What is actually being queer? What is actually becoming a queer? And how is it related to the discourses of the Bisu? So in the study of gender in Indonesia, there are so many terms that you will know being used both by academics and the activists. So maybe you have heard of term transpuan, transgender perempuan, or the terms banci, bencong, or any other terms like waria. And interestingly, previously, the term of waria, as we all know, is a short for wanita pria. Previously, it was refused to use because the term waria itself, it is believed have the derogative meaning to the community. However, on the other side, the activists insisted that to use the term waria or any other locum term to revert to the gender in between or non-normative gender is actually trying to represent Nusantara identity or of transgenderism. So between those discourse, I myself, I think it is important to mention that by definition, the term queer itself comes for me as a researcher, as I believe it gives wider space to a contested discourse than the term of LGBTIQ+. So in short, queer itself means, I think it is more like intersectional of identity. So it is something like a catch-all phrase that be an umbrella for those who identifying themselves outside the normative gender. outside the normative gender and sexual identity. So I think in terms of that, queer can represent, I don't know, I don't say it can represent, but I think that when we speak about Bisu, it is more comfortable to put it in the terms of a queer rather than LGBTIQ, because one of my interlocutors, they actually stated that they're more comfortable to the terms rather than transgender or chalabay. They prefer the terms of waria itself, because they try, in fact, that they try to avoid the terms of LGBTIQ because it is considered triggering within the community, as it is associated with the negative stigmas within the society. So another reason why the term queer, I think it is interesting to see the transformation of queer, the term of queer itself, because before it used as a it has a derogative meaning. Queer means odd, queer means that you are outside of the normal, and it used as a slur. But it is interesting how the term queer itself like transform into something that empower the community. It become a driving force for a community to empowering themselves to be able to identify themselves outside of the non-normative community. And it leads me to another point that then what does indigenous care means? What is a third gender or 5 genders in Bugis society? As maybe you have heard of hijras in India or muxes in Native North American society. And I think it is actually interesting, how does colonialism actually have something to do with the gender understanding? Okay. I think a little bit here. It is very interesting to say that if we talk about gender and sexuality studies, we often talk about pronouns, right? But here, since it is a safe space, let me also tell my pronouns. But I think it's very interesting to see that how Bahasa Indonesia actually provides a very safe space in terms of pronouns. I am comfortable with the pronouns ka, dia, or nya as the language itself is. The language provides so much tolerant space in terms of gender identity, in terms of the pronouns, as our language, Bahasa Indonesia, is very genderless, right? So yeah, I think it is brief about the pronouns. And then to answer the questions about the third gender and colonialism. So as you can see in the slide, the pictures that I get is from Guardian and Atlantis, in the Guardian and Atlantis, but on the very right, it is a picture of my field work. But what I want to emphasize in this slide is, for these people, the idea of non-normative gender is ancient and sacred. So Gilbert Hurt, in his book Third Sexes and Third Genders, popularized the term of third gender outside being in a normative gender, which is related to be sacred, to be rooted in the sacred belief in each society. So Gilbert Hurt also stated it is important to look further into how non-normative gender ideas that rooted in the local or indigenous knowledge it already existed way before our understanding of gender binarism, and how colonialism takes a role in terms of shifting that knowledge into the binary, or quoted from Gilbert Hurt's term is a sexual dimorphism, or in other words, is binary gender. So it just like you can see, there's a two-spirit or Ihamana from Native North American. They were born into a male body and wearing men's and women's clothing. Ihamana spend time performing women's tasks like cooking, gathering food, also serving as a mediator in the Zuni tribe in New Mexico. And also there's a Hijras. Hijras is actually known, they come from Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. They identify as a woman born into male bodies. Some of them is actually being castrated because they try to conduct a celibate life. And also there's a Mukses, if I'm not mistaken, in the spelling, but Mukse here is those who born in a male's body, but identify neither as a female or a male, not a transgender as well. So it is kind of identity that's specific to the Oxa region, rooted in the indigenous Zapoteca cultures. So in the Zapoteca culture, it is actually a blessing and good luck to have a Mukse in the family. And back to the Hijras, I think it's very interesting also to see in terms of Hijras, British colonialism in the 19th century, trying to criminalize Hijra through various laws, and how these laws were later repealed after India's independence. And I think it's very much related that what I will explain later on the colonial traces in South Sulawesi. But in brief, that Regina already explained about Bisu. I think Bisu, it is very important to note here that in Bugis society, they acknowledge the roles and position of Bisu within their society, because there are the importance of androgynous ancestors in the myth of Lagaligo, the myth of the sun and the moon and the between, that represent gold and silver as both in the sun, but that known later as the first light, and how in their myth and in their Bugis cosmologies, they acknowledge Bisu as a medium, as a sacred role that holds very important position that connects between Botinglangi or upper world and Tungkenalino or middle world, and how they speak through Dewata Sawaya or the gods through the language of the god, or known as Basa Torilangi. So I'm going to skip it here. Yeah, the colonial traces in South Sulawesi. So I tried to deliver it, the explanation on how the shifting of gender understanding happened that affect these communities in South Sulawesi. First of all, there's actually 6 points that I want to deliver. The first one is how it appeared in the findings of Christian Pelras in 1969. Is this also in Sillars, Barbara Harvey Sillars? They mention about the colonial travel notes, particularly into these two notes, the Portuguese named Antonio de Paiva and the British named James Brooke. Both stated how the practice of Bisu is different from Christianity, and that at that time, and how they associate it with this gas in terms of they try to relate it with the homosexual practices. They try to understand it shortly and trying to explain it in their travel notes as a homosexual practices. I think it is interesting to see how the colonials lenses trying to understanding the Bugis indigenous knowledge here. And second of all, there's a dichotomy between the world religion and animism that actually this thinking initiated by Kurt. So Kurt stated that Kurt and Will stated that there's evolution of the religion, right? So religions evolving from pre-animism, animism, and to the world religions. So in terms of being civilized, quote unquote, a religion, of animism religion had to change to world religion frameworks, and it had effect on Bugis society ever since, as the dichotomy would lead to the disappearance of religious dimensions of adat So before, adat has this sacred and religious dimension, but after this understanding of dichotomy of world religion and animism, adat has lost its religious dimension, and adat is more associated with the culture. And it is also affect the institutionalizations of adat in terms of South Sulawesi. So in the institutionalizations of adat, it is limited only to the noble family and those who appointed by government. It is interesting to see how Bisu is placed outside of its constellation, regardless their important position and roles as a religious leader in every ritual concerning of adat. And the third point that I want to raise is actually Dutch ethical policy that began in 1900. So it's the beginning of 20th century. In that time, Dutch government issues a policy that tried to separate adat and Islam in Indonesia, because Dutch government was upset with local resistance, where it was using Orthodoxy Islamism as a how do you say, a driving force or a collective force in the society to fight against Dutch colonialism. So in the fact of that, we can see that specifically in South Sulawesi, there's a rise of Muslim militants. And it affects also the different understanding of the discourse of adat and Islam. And there's two groups ever since, the groups of Islam Orthodox and Islam Modernists, because of that policy issued by the Dutch government. And I think it's very important to see how later on it will affect both of it, the dichotomy between world religion and animism, and the policy will later affect to the purification of Islam. So in 1950s and 1960s, there's a two rebellion that often associated with the purification of Islam. The first one is Darul Islam, led by the ITI, led by Kahar Muzakkar. And the second one is Mapatoba. I think it's very important of these two I won't say phenomenon, but these two events, that there's a proliferations of Islamic Orthodox that that before happened because of the policy, the ethical policy, and how this proliferation led to purification of Islam, and that and led it to mass killings of Bisu and burning manuscript of all pre-Islamic belief. It is not only happened to Bisu, but it's also happened to the indigenous belief in South Sulawesi, because they were associated with animism, with mushrik, which is shirk, and it is not according into Islamic teachings. And now let me to the fifth point here in the post-New Order era. And it's very interesting how what happened after post-New Order era as a democratization gave rise not only into Islamic Orthodoxy and Islamic Modernism, but it gave rise also to the emerging organizations like Hidayatullah, KPPSI, the Committee on Preparation and Enforcement of Islamic Sharia, that led by Kahar Muzakkar San, and also Wahda Islamiyah, Tablighi Jamaat, Ikhwanul Muslimin, and Shia. So there's a various, there's emerging various Islamic organization here after the fall of Suharto, and how the Islamic thinking here was delivered not in terms of community levels, but it is also through the individual levels, name it by da'wah, education of by politics. And I think in the last point, it is noteworthy to look further how this led to the tendency to compare the past Bisu and today's Bisu that led to what I call the desacralizations of Bisu. So there's a tendency to compare it by saying that, as I quoted, Bisu is sacred, but Bisu are not. They are not sacred. They only prevent. So it gives rise to a new dichotomy as trying to classify what is sacred and what is proven, and by putting it, putting bisu in the proven, in the province sphere, it is another way of saying that they are not sacred anymore. So this new differentiation, they said that it both, they mentioned it's a group bisu or pabisu, or in other words, that the one who acted like a bisu but not a bisu. So it's just like imagining an actor that played the role of bisu. So they are not the real bisu, something like that. And I think it proves that there's a zero legitimation to bisu in terms of structure. Okay. In the retelling the story, I think I try to be brief here. As you can see the picture, one of bisu cut my hair short as I was having a conversation with them about their life. So this is kind of brief explanation on how identity is formed, as you can see it. I'm not going through this any further, but I'm trying to explain how, by retelling the story of bisu, I think it is a way of try to reconstruct their identity. So I want to make sure that in terms of a researcher, I had the privilege to retell the story as quote unquote their way of reconstructing their identity. So I put the argument firstly on the self and others, and how the Beauvoir concept on feminist existentialists that place the self and the others, and how gender is the part of becoming, not a being. So it is counted through our action that actually define our existence. And also Butler's concept on performativity, as she believed in her book In Gender Trouble that gender is a layer of performance. And I think I want to raise important point here. Sarah Ahmed in her book Queer Phenomenology emphasized that it is important to be able to capture queer experience. We have to understand that it is different for queer body experience life compared to cis hetero body experience life. So to be able to capture their narrative or their story fully, we have to understand that queer body equals queer experience. And in terms of that, speaking of queer spirituality, we have to see by being queer, it is actually like a verb. So we have to do it. So to see that how to queer spirituality can be shown in the daily life, we have to see it as a journey, like their life as a pilgrimage and a movement. So it led me into the point that Sarah Ayub in The Moral Gender and Professor Etin Anwar said that to be able to depict their spirituality, we can actually see from the 3 levels of ethical progression within self, family, and society. And Professor Etin Anwar actually particularly emphasized that power differences is actually a gender knowledge or gender system that operates first within the family. And I think it's very important to, citing from Patricia Hill Collins here, her book about the Black identity, Black women identity, she stated that how one experience can validate in terms of academic study. There's a particular phrase that shook me when, let me quote what she was saying in her book. She said that emotion indicates that the speaker believes in the validity of an argument. So in terms of validity of the research, it is interesting how Patricia Hill Collins raised an argument about individual perspective can take place in general understanding of knowledge. And she stated that the validation actually inherent in the emotion that happened between the researcher and interlocutors. I won't say informants because it's more like teman bicara or interlocutors. And it leads me to last point of trying to deconstruct this narrative as a data. As a Sabah Mahmud in politics of piety refers that there's a two important point in Sabah Mahmud's statement that she said that pious self-cultivations in terms that self is able to find truth to different practice as a way of embodiment. So in other words, that body is actually a field for self-development in terms of understanding of religion. Okay. First of all, by identifying self, it is interesting to see here. So it is actually daftar hadir of one event that held by Kerukunan Waria, also with Bisu community in the January this year. So as you can see, I think it's important to note that to be able to acknowledge themselves, they have to first be able to identifying their identity with the understanding, their understanding. So this part, I think, represent how well the identity in terms of the first space it provides us, not only them, to express, to give the freedom to express themselves, and how in each spaces it also provides different kind of freedom to expressing themselves. A little backstory about this absence list. At first, we had difficulty explaining to the participant whether they associate with some gender identity, because the requirements of the absence list, which are common known, usually we only put that female, male, and non-binary. So it is hard to explain to them what the concept of non-binary here. And we cannot explain one by one to them, to the participant, what the meaning of non-binary is, for those who do not understand, right? So we have this initiative to, why don't we put the gender self-identification in their local knowledge? So we try to put it to classify it as a 5 types of gender. And interestingly, when the choice is given through this frame of local indigenous knowledge regarding their gender identity, it was easier for the participant to identify themselves. Although at first they felt kind of uncomfortable to try to identify themselves, but gradually they see the safe space to be able to identify themselves, and then they start to put a mark on either Chalabay or Bisu or Urwani or Makunrai. And I think another exciting thing from this process of identifying self, that several individuals actually put themselves as with the different identifying process, as we can see that, for example, this day they put their name as written in their KTP, but the very next day they put their name in terms of their Chalabay name. And I think it is actually proven how gender is fluid in terms of Bugis knowledge of gender. I think it's very, very interesting to be able to experience that. So next, on the self-acceptance. Here is a quotation that I took from the interview, one of the interview, but a bit of disclaimer that the pictures is not related with the narrative. I think in the process of self-acceptance itself, the process of coming out become very important, as in it is a very different in each person, in each individual, and how it is also intertwined with the family acceptance. But I think the same thing is expressed in the same thing that kept shown in the process of self-acceptance of bisu, that it is believed that the process itself, it is not finished. It is still ongoing process, how they accept themselves as it is. As I quote in the interview, let me read it for you. I fell in there and did it. Even at the time, I felt like I was in turmoil. I asked, why am I like this? Where did all my parents' teaching go? Although not extensively, they taught me about religion. How could I end up here, even though I went to school and I made it to graduate? My head was filled with the question. I was crying, laughing at myself and my life. I kept asking why. I even used to think of myself an animal. Nevertheless, thank God, gradually I found my way back. First, I used to be disappointed in myself. Then I reflected that my philosophy of life is being strong. I could do nothing but be strong. If not, my two legs could not support my past sins, which had already punctured my soul and my body. And it is hard to tell what kind of person I am. How could I say it? A man who falls in love with a man instead of a woman. God made me fall in love with a man. So I think their acceptance, their self-acceptance process is very, as I mentioned. But as far as interlocutors say, all interlocutors that I have met say that they explain the internal conflict persists and realize they were different and try to accept it. And they never asked to be born that way. And they believe that Allah created them for a purpose, not simply to be called a mushrik. So they try to find purpose in life within their Islamic pious self through worshiping. The second part is family acceptance. I think in terms of family acceptance, also I'm getting very responses, but the interesting one is the story how they actually have a family or relative that being a bisu, not necessarily a bisu, but it can be a jenang or sandro, but they have or even simply a chalabay or a chalalay in their family. So this kind of thing makes their coming out process easier. I think it is very interesting story to tell here. So there's one my interlocutors. He said, he said that he realized from his childhood that he preferred to play with doll, house, and cook, playing doll, playing house, playing cook. And even as a kid, he had long hair until he graduated. And he realized that he learned in a very slowly that he was not attracted to women, but to men. And his part of coming out actually happened when he asked his parents permission to take part into Kasidah Rebana. So her sister went to Kasidah Rebana practices, and she asked him to come along and waiting her until after the practices. When the practices going on, there's a ketukan rebana that could not be able to follow for all the participant in the Kasidah Rebana. And he asked the coach back then whether he would able to repeated the music with the Rebana, and surprisingly he did succeedingly well. So since then the Kasidah coach asked him invited him to join. For the information, Kasidah Rebana is a group of women. So when he asked that to he asked his parents actually stay silent and give the permission to join the Kasidah Rebana. Okay, in terms of visibility, in the society, I think Bugis society provides provides a safe space so it's not only bisu but the non-normative gender existence can have their visibility within the community. So the story that I would like to point it here, that one of the bisu is actually a civil servant, and also he told me the story how he expressed himself by wear policeman shoes. And I think it is interesting that he said that there's no like larangan or keberatan from their work colleagues. So as I mentioned, that my chief at the office also accepted. For instance, there was a meeting yesterday. He felt thankful because I could take a role as a woman and a man. Not only him, other chiefs said alike. They once pointed out that they were appreciative that I was unlike other warrior who was displaying too much femininity. In spite of that, I was comfortable with my way of dressing. My femininity is expressed through my shoes, not wearing revealing women's clothes. I never get a warning for wearing heels like a policewoman used to wear. They would flatter instead. I would reply by joking that it was my way of expressing my disappointment that I could not be a policewoman, so I wear the shoes. Later, the last one in the pious self and embodied resistance. I think it's very interesting that most of my interlocutors kept explaining to me that how they conduct Rukun Islam or Rukun Iman, but they always pointed that they never live Salat. So let me read it for you, that I learned the basic teachings of Islam, such as Rukun Iman, Rukun Islam, from my parents, also from my surroundings. Apart from Shahadat, there's also Shalat, fasting, zakat, and Haji. And I perform Salat because I am a Muslim. Not only that, I also do Salat Tahajjud every time I feel upset or confused because of my problem. Nonetheless, I still perform Salat even though I feel at ease. Salat 5 times in the day is our obligation as the Muslims. And I could also pray at night if I really need to. So he also mentioned that Friday prayers will also be carried out. And he mentioned that if he had intention to do Salat, regardless of the possibility I could perform it, he could still get a pahala. So in the process of interviewing, it usually took like 4 hours. So there's a Salat times in between. And my interlocutors, most of them that try to excuse themselves to perform Salat in between the interview time. As you can see in the picture, that is bisu perform Salat. So for capturing the experience visually, I think it's interesting to see the overview on this slide. I will explain later in the questions and answer session, but this archive taken from Kaite Alpha digital collection. It is not Kaite Alpha, but also from New York Public Library and National Congress. There's a still going on. So I follow traces in the archival digital collection. And there's interesting that I found that this is actually bisu, the picture of bisu in the 1930 from Bone. And it is also, it is not necessarily a bisu, but it is a ritual of king appointment in Bone. And all of the rest of it is the picture of bisu from Segeri. So I conducted my field work in 4 regencies from Bone, Sopeng, Wajo, and Segeri. And to give you an illustration what happened in 1993, it is mapalili, or a ritual of harvesting that happened back there. You can see this is they perform a magiri, or the ritual of stabbing themselves as a part of proving that they are possessed by the gods, so they're not hurt when they're stabbing themselves with keris. It's a part of ritual. And also this is alusu, or the item they use during the ritual while dancing Sera Alusu. And this is the bisu in the Bola Rajang, or rumah adat, where the pusaka is being saved there. I think this is another picture taken during a field work, as I mentioned, for regency during a year. And I visited the leader of BISU in each regency, and also with their permission, follow with them in the performing rituals and every day. So I think in every regency, they had each of their own rituals, and it differs from one place to another. As you can see there, it is the magiri that perform nowadays. So you have the comparison from back there and nowadays. And it is also they perform as Indo-boting or Induk pengantin that beautify the Bugis bride. So they have this kind of, they will appear more beautiful like the usual day. And this is, I think it's ritual in Sopeng. I think in masa pewanua or memagari pagar, same with ritual of tolak bala, or to avoid something bad happen to the village. And this is the rituals of Malakawai, or the process of taking holy water, or holy water from 7 sacred springs that that present in Boni. I think it is enough for the picture in that slide. Okay, this is the last slide. I think it's very interesting to see how BISU involved in various activism. So by being waria, they usually they become a BISU because they have kind of callings through a dream to become a BISU. So nowadays, I think it's very important to see how their involvement in activism, in terms of activism, sometimes led them to the way to desacralize their identity, because they often as being associated with waria because their work, the activism work. In the picture, as you can see, BISU get involved in several activism, namely with warrior organization, local government, adat and religious evaluation. I want to show, this is very interesting, that this is the archive that I get from Yayasan Gaya Celebes. It is a transgender organization, the first actually transgender organization that that present in South Sulawesi. In their pemilihan waria cantik peduli AIDS and narkoba in 2004, there's a BISU performing also the ritual for the opening of the event there. Okay, last point. I think the how do you say it? It becomes an important notes to me to put more, to address more attention how BISU use the virtual space to become new space of contestation. So as I quoted from my interview with one interlocutors, he mentioned that he posted a lot of stories in their media, social media, because they want to prove others who think that they are mushrik, that actually the BISU are the same with another people in terms of performing their worship. And I think it is very interesting as a way of self-representation and how the way they reconstruct their identity. So you can see that this is taken while doing salat, and there's also Teki virtually, that held virtually for warriors in South Sulawesi, and they also make an event of buka bersama with the community, warrior community, and also the cultural community in their respective region. So I think it led me to my closing remarks. I'm not here to conclude, but I think it is important to see that Bisu is actually a living evidence of how negotiation between Adat and Islam exists in the Bugis society. And the second point, that the dichotomy of Adat and religion, in this case, that Islam needs to be explored further as it relates how Bisu face current challenge and how it affects their position. And lastly, that the aspects of Bisu daily life illustrates the contingency of their identity, both from self-acceptance, family acceptance, their visibility or invisibility in the society, and their pious self, how they try to perform their pious self within the society through a queer body. Thank you. Regina, back at you. And please give any insight comments that I believe it will be valuable for me.
Okay, thank you, Kak Jessie. It's really a nice presentation. I'm really interested that maybe I think nowadays I just focus on the queer that exists in international community, but I really surprised that we have such a rich culture with this local queer community, and then I really want to learn more about this. I think so Kak Jessie, thank you for the presentation, and now we will continue to our next agenda. We will have a question and answer session, and we will have two sessions. Each session we will accept not only question, but we want to hear maybe just like Jessie mentioned, insightful comments or opinions, and just feel free. You can tell it in English language or Bahasa Indonesia. We will very happy to accept any comments, opinions, or questions. So maybe, is there any question? On the participants, I can spot many of international relations students. Maybe you have questions for Kak Jessie? If you have a question, please just raise your hand through the raise hand function in this Zoom meeting, and then I'll let you ask your question. Okay, we're still waiting. Maybe from Kak Christian Fretes, or there are also Kak Adintea, Kak Umbu, or somebody else. Maybe if you don't have any question, maybe just an opinion, or you want to share same experience, you have some local queer community in your region too. Okay, because we are still waiting for our participants to maybe think about their question. Oh, okay. We have King Oe. Please, sir.
Okay. My question is actually if you can explain how somebody becomes a bisu in terms of training, in terms of what is it? The call. How do you feel? How do you know that you have a calling to become a bisu? and how do you seek for education and training? So has that been studied?
Thank you, Pak, for the question. Regina, can I just directly answer the question?
Okay, Kak Jessie, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Pak. So in the process of being a bisu, it is actually a two understanding here, but as far as I find in the previous research also through my field work that for a senior bisu, they mentioned that to be able to be a bisu, you have to go through a ritual called ireba. So you cannot call yourself a bisu, which happened today. Interestingly, that not of them already perform ireba, because how do you say it? So there's a stratification in terms of bisu. So in terms to be able to be a bisu tanre or bisu who have high knowledge in terms of Bugis adat and Pangandaran as a Bugis cultural values, to be able to conduct the rituals, they have to not only be able to speak Bahasa Torilangi, as I mentioned, but also have high knowledge on the culture and the Pangandaran. Pangandaran itself, it consists of five values from adat, rapang, wari, bicara, and Sharia or Islam or religion. As in, it is cannot separated one from another. So in terms of that, one believes that if you want to be called yourself a bisu, you have to go through ireba. But the younger bisu said that if we keep ourselves in that understanding, bisu can be distinct, because to be able to perform ireba, it is very difficult, and not much bisu can do that. So those who haven't performed ireba yet, they call themselves only bisu pasere, or bisu who dances, who currently now in terms of quantity is more than bisu who have performed ireba. And in terms of how they know they become a bisu, I think it is come through callings, but so in my few interlocutors, they mentioned they had it in the dream, the callings from the Dewata Sewai, how they have to let the celibate life and to perform rituals in Bugis in Bugis rituals. And second one, I think there's a story from my interlocutors. He said that back then, when he joined Lembaga Seni Budaya to learn about dances in the Bugis culture, he performed in front of a bisu leader, and that specifically bisu leader told another bisu from the region that that kid who dances will later become a bisu. And 10 years, fast forwarding to 10 years, he now become a bisu, but only a bisu pasere. He said that I'm in the process of doing what I believe in, but if the callings lead me to do ireba, I will do it. But for now on, I stay here to perform, trying to perform as a bisu pasere. I hope that answered your question. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you.
Okay, is it enough, sir? Sir, is it enough?
I think
Uh,
it's enough, Regina. So another
Yeah, it's
person raising up his hands, but it's
So,
disappeared.
Kak Aldo Patinama also raised his hand. Just directly ask Kak Jessie, please Kak.
Ya, terima kasih. Apakah tidak apa-apa saya
It's
memakai
okay.
bahasa Indonesia?
It's okay. Nggak apa-apa.
Selamat sore semuanya, dan selamat sore Kak Jessie. Terima kasih untuk materi yang sangat menarik. Dan kebetulan juga saya menulis tentang bisu untuk bagian dari skripsi tugas akhir saya di Fakultas Teologi S1. Dan membawa pemahaman baru tentang Ihamana, Hijrah, dan Marxis, terutama juga tokoh-tokoh yang membawa atau melakukan pencarian di Sulawesi Selatan, Antonio de Paiva dan James Brock. Oh ya, saya kenalkan dulu, saya Aldo Patinama, saya mahasiswa 2018 Fakultas Teologi, dan saya berasal dari Makassar, Sulawesi Selatan. Jadi yang mungkin yang saya mau tanyakan tentang apakah ada pergeseran makna tentang selama Kak Jessie berada studi lapangan di sana, terutama nilai-nilai sakralitas bisu di konteks sekarang, di konteks dengan kemajuan dan perkembangan saat ini. Dan yang kedua tentang keberadaan bisu sejauh yang saya baca di jurnal-jurnal, keberadaan bisu itu banyak di Pangkep atau di Pangkajene Kepulauan sejauh yang saya baca. Apakah peran bisu yang ada di Pangkep itu lebih besar atau sama saja dengan bisu-bisu yang ada di daerah lainnya yang kakak jumpai di studi lapangan kakak? Terima kasih, mungkin itu saja. Terima kasih Kak.
Terima kasih Aldo, pertanyaannya. Bagus sekali pertanyaannya. Bisa saya
langsung Kak Jessie?
Oke.
Ulangi lagi pertanyaannya.
Pertanyaan pertama Aldo ya, apakah ada pergeseran antara posisi dan peran bisu dalam masyarakat Bugis? Pergeseran ada, dan kalau sejauh saya riset selama setahun ini, sebenarnya saya sudah riset itu sudah 2018, tapi karena COVID saya baru bisa mobile bolak-balik ke lapangan itu mulai 2021 ya, tahun kemarin. Kebetulan saya juga lahir di Makassar. Kalau kita bicara soal pergeseran peran dan posisi, saya bicara dulu di penelitian sebelumnya ya. Penelitian sebelumnya itu selalu mengatakan bahwa persoalan pertama adalah bisu itu sudah tidak memiliki akses kepemilikan akan tanah seperti pada zaman kerajaan. Sehingga persoalan pertama yang muncul adalah persoalan ekonomi yang mengharuskan mereka bergeser perannya dari penjaga pusaka di rumah Arajang, rumah pusaka, menjadi mencari uang, mencari sumber ekonomi sebagai Indoboting. Bahkan kalau sepenglihatan saya, termin Indoboting ini sendiri bergeser. Yang tadinya induk pengantin, sekarang itu Indoboting itu mencakup semua hal yang berhubungan dengan pernikahan, seperti mendandani pengantin perempuan, lalu kemudian mengurus dekorasi pengantin, lalu juga kemudian menyediakan pakaian untuk pernikahan gitu. Itu sebenarnya adalah pergeseran yang menarik juga kalau kita bicara tentang posisi Indoboting di konteks budaya quote unquote yang tradisional dan sekarang yang ada modern gitu ya. Kan kalau kita berdiri pada konsep konstruktivis gitu, kita kan percaya bahwa identitas itu selalu berubah gitu, dan tugas kita sebagai peneliti adalah menangkap perubahan itu gitu dan bisa menjelaskannya dalam satu penelitian. Nah, kalau misalnya perubahan tadi dari Indoboting sendiri, ada perubahan baru yang kemudian menarik untuk dilihat, karena perubahan ini tidak bisa kita lepaskan dari meningkatnya Islam fundamentalis yang ada di Sulawesi Selatan gitu. Dan ini juga sudah dijelaskan dalam penelitian-penelitian sebelumnya bagaimana efek peningkatan Islam fundamentalis itu memperkecil ruang negosiasi bisu. Salah satunya adalah contoh nyata misalnya tidak sedikit pengantin yang menolak untuk didandani oleh bisu karena bukan muhrim. Padahal kalau kita bicara konteks pengetahuan gendernya mereka secara fisik dan identitas itu, ekspresi pun mereka itu menyatakan bahwa saya ini nggak suka sama Anda gitu, yang perempuan, saya tidak tertarik gitu. Kalau muhrim itu kan ada ketertarikan yang konteksnya seksual di situ gitu. Dan itu kemudian muncul sebagai salah satu yang saya rasa bisa dikatakan pergeseran peran dan posisi. Karena meningkatnya Islam fundamentalis. Dan mungkin terakhir, saya rasa di sini juga ada teman-teman yang membantu saya penelitian di lapangan ya. Saya itu bukan apa-apa kalau tanpa teman-teman saya yang ada di lapangan. Banyak sekali peneliti-peneliti lokal yang membantu saya untuk mendapatkan data-data tentang bisu. Hal yang mungkin kalau misalnya Aldo bisa lihat yang menjadi lampu merah mungkin ya kalau bisa saya bilang dalam melihat bagaimana pergeseran bisu itu hadir sampai sekarang adalah bagaimana mereka tidak berperan dalam salah satu ritual penting pencucian pusaka di Boni. Dan itu baru terjadi beberapa bulan lalu. Gitu. Bukti bahwa mereka bisa tidak berperan dalam ritual adalah bukti pergeseran yang nyata terkait posisi dan perannya dalam masyarakat Bugis. Gitu. Tapi kita tidak bicara itu dalam konteks yang gitu ya, kita harus bicara itu dalam konteks yang besar, karena di balik itu juga ada kontestasi narasi, tidak hanya soal Islam fundamentalis saja di situ, gitu. Tapi patut untuk dijadikan korpus data lebih jauh, kenapa kemudian bisu yang tadinya posisinya itu penting dan tidak boleh dihilangkan dalam ritual, tiba-tiba kok di tahun ini posisinya hilang dalam ritual. Itu sih mungkin contoh nyata yang bisa saya sampaikan terkait penemuan lapangan saya. Gitu. Bisa banget dicari di internet, udah banyak banget berita tentang hilangnya bisu di perayaan Hari Jadi Bone ke-692. Okay, I think it's enough. I hope it answer your question, Aldo.
Oke, terima kasih Kak.
Sama-sama. Regina, I cannot hear your voice. I think there's something wrong with the connection, so I cannot hear your voice. Yeah, still. Something wrong with the connection. Yeah. Can anyone hear Regina, or I'm just the one who cannot hear Regina, what Regina was saying? Okay. Yeah. Apparently there's some, you're not connecting to the speaker, I guess, to the sound. Yeah. Maybe meanwhile, I actually expect comments or I don't know, additional comments from Thea or Kak Chris here, because both are joined here today. Thank you for joining. And also there's a Bia here. Halo Bia.
Halo Kak.
Hai.
Ini
ada Feby juga, I believe.
Saya boleh bertanya sebentar?
Ya, boleh Bia.
Oke,
Ya, silakan.
ini bahasa Indonesia aja ya Kak.
Nggak apa-apa.
Oke. Ini seperti yang kita ketahui dalam ritual atau Maharajang itu kan ada ritual-ritual pencucian pusaka. Nah, dalam pencucian pusaka itu dilakukan di beberapa sumber mata air. Nah, untuk pemilihan sumber mata air itu apakah ada kaitannya dengan ekologi adat yang oleh bisu ketahui atau yang sebelum-sebelumnya memang itu dari bisu gitu. Gitu, Kak.
Terima kasih, Mia.
Oke.
Mau langsung dijawab aja sih?
Boleh.
Nggak suara,
Karena
cek.
sekarang udah ada suaranya, tadi nggak ada. Bia, makasih banget pertanyaannya, itu harus taking into account karena memang beberapa kali saya itu diskusi dan melihat bahwa posisi bisu ini tidak hanya dalam konstelasi sosio-religius penting dalam ritual, tapi juga ada hubungannya dengan konteks ekologi masyarakat adat gitu. Dan sejujurnya saya belum sampai ke sana, cuman saya rasa penempatan mata air, sesuatu yang kita katakan sakral itu kan pasti berhubungan dengan mata air gitu. Mungkin perubahan yang perlu, yang justru yang saya lihat ya Bia, bukan justru kenapa mata air ini berada, kenapa ada di situ gitu, tapi lebih kepada dari 7 mata air itu, 2 diantaranya berada di masjid. Itu. Jadi menurut saya yang menarik justru kenapa ya dari 7 mata air itu 2 itu ada di masjid gitu. Itu jadi seperti representasi ruang tentang bagaimana adat dan sara itu bisa hadir di dalam masyarakat gitu kan. Itu sih mungkin, tapi kalau untuk konteksnya dengan ekologi alam, mungkin ekologi adat, saya belum bisa berani bicara jauh, tapi terima kasih sekali masukannya, itu akan menarik sekali untuk dilihat apakah kemudian secara historis ya peran bisu dalam ekologis adat itu bisa punya pengaruh terhadap bagaimana peran dan posisi bisu ketika kita bicara dalam aspek sosio-religiusnya. Terima kasih, Bia.
Bagaimana Kak Bia? Sudah bisa
Oke,
diterima?
makasih Kak.
Okay. Terima kasih Kak Bia. So now we will continue to the next session. Since we have 3 questions back in the last session. For this session, we also want to accept 3 questions or any opinions regarding our discussion. So please just raise your hand, please, if you want to ask some question or maybe give an insightful comment for Kak Jessie presentation. Okay, maybe because we're still waiting for you to ask your question. Is it okay if I want to ask Kak Jessie? Okay.
Obviously, please.
Okay, Kak Jessie, so now, no, I just read the articles about the population of bisu in South Sulawesi that actually is decreased from year to year. It's really a pity that this community is fighting for the extinction. And the reality is there are only maybe around 50 people that are recognized as a bisu. My question is how the community respond to this. Is there any discussion room that they are open to pursue? There are any bisu we will have any bisu so we won't lose our cultural treasure. That's the first question, how the community respond to this extinction phenomenon. And the second question is how the government responds to this. I mean, bisu of course is a cultural feature that government don't want to lose it because they are the icon of South Sulawesi, especially Bugis, that maybe make many people come to Bugis and learn about this. So how the government responds to this extinction of bisu? Thank you, Kak.
Thank you, Regina. Very interesting question. Thank you so much for the question. So the first one is regarding to the response of the general public, right, the masyarakat, and the second one is how about the government, how they react regarding such situation. So I think it is interesting to see again the findings that I read on the previous research is actually similar, but with a little shift in terms of my findings during a field work. So first one is the response of the general public or the community. In terms of community, we speak community as in regard of their family or their immediate environment. They don't give how to say it, but their position is actually sorry, let me rephrase it this way. Their position, the community, actually present in the very important important roles and position in terms of they hold not only they're being respected as an individual because what they are doing or as not only a bisu but as a part of their family or part of a certain community, whether it is their warrior community or the neighborhood, because in terms of their family, most of them are the breadwinner of the family, so they give job, they pay for the school of their extended family. So in that kind of situation, all the interlocutors hold. I would say that it is very important in terms of their family, and because of that, they have this kind of capital to be accepted regardless of their gender identity. And I also want to add, it is in line with Susan Millard research in Bugis wedding. So in her research, she stated that in Bugis society, it is actually what the most important is actually social status compared to gender identity. And I can see that clearly through the life of bisu nowadays, how sometimes it is not a problem being how they whether they identify themselves as a bisu or a warrior, because in terms of their family, they help them to get a job or get money or pay their school, their son's school or something like that. And in terms of their neighborhood or wider community, they also have this kind of good reputation. In one regency, I found that they never actually experienced, for those who are born after 1980, they mentioned that they never experience religious, not only religious, the discrimination, general discrimination. There, there were one or two that bullying them, saying that bencong, something like that, but they actually have the group of support, of group of friends that support them, that they will focus into the into the how do you say it, into their dreams of the engagement with the, for example, in school, they would be active in the many organization, and they have friends. So these friends would defend them against those who calling them by names, something like that. But for those who born before 1980, some of them actually still have this kind of trauma of what happened in the 50s or 60s. So they carry on their trauma of Bisu being killed because they were not Islam enough. They were not in accordance of religious teaching. So yeah, that's kind of a dynamic, I would say, the dynamic of their identity within the society. But in terms of government, I wouldn't say that they not helping, but the government would only give hand as long as Bisu became, like a right hand of them. So they do not want to put Bisu in the institutionalized or the structure, but they only acknowledge Bisu in terms of adat practices. So in short, to explain both about the community and the structural, they are highly regarded in the community or in everyday practices, whether it's adat or outside of adat. But when it comes to structure, I don't think so. They don't have the power to be able to be recognized to be acknowledged in terms of that institutionalized adat, whether it's local government, because right now Dewan Adat or Lembaga Adat, it is connected to the Dinas Pariwisata or Dinas Kebudayaan. Yeah, something like that, Regina. I hope it answered your question. I tried to explain it, but sorry for the blubbering.
Okay, Kak Jessie, thank you. It really answered my questions. Oh, okay. So maybe my question just makes everyone want to give a question again. So we have Kak Andilin Thea in the comment section, and Mr. King Oi just raised his hand. Maybe which one, Kak Jessie? Which one will?
I think I go maybe following into the, like the section chat. They ask first, and then we follow with Pak King and Rena, I think.
Okay. I'm so sorry, Mr. King and Rena. So now we will. Okay. Kak Andilin Thea have a question in comment section. Hi Kak Jess, thank you for the presentation on your very interesting research. So the question is being Bisu can be said as a lifelong decision, or Bisus can be detached from this identity? Okay, Kak Jessie, you will directly answer, or?
I think I will gather all the questions. I try to answer all at once, if it's okay, regarding the time.
Okay.
So, yeah.
The next question is from Rena. Apakah posisi bisu sebagai bagian dari pemimpin ritual adat juga turut mempengaruhi sehingga mereka dapat dikatakan juga mendominasi dalam usaha Indo-Boting di masyarakat Bugis? Tolong dikoreksi jika istilah mendominasi ini kurang tepat. Jika itu benar, apakah hal tersebut juga menjadi daya tarik bagi waria untuk menjadi bagian dari bisu? Itu dari Rena, Kak. Kemudian untuk Mr. King, please.
Yeah, my question is actually regarding the cultural recognition. I don't know if the Bisu has been recognized by the UNESCO as an intangible, how you call it, intangible cultural phenomenon, and if not, would it be easy to apply for it?
Mm.
Have you heard my question?
Yes, I heard it fine. Thank you, Pak King. Okay, maybe I try to answer it from, it is related actually the question of Rena and Pak King, but to begin that, to respond to that question, Bisu is a lifelong decisions, or it can be detached from identity. I think when we talk about identity, we cannot, like picking out the vegetables for your salad, something like that. So it's like when you have a bowl of salad, when you put a new kind of vegetable, it stays in the in the mangkok. Oh, in the cup. So it stays in the cup. So in terms of that, the identity of being a bisu, you cannot choose to be bisu. You are chosen to be bisu. So in terms of being chosen as a bisu, how you perform your gender identity is actually creating new determination, new definition of being a bisu. So this dynamic of the emergence of understanding of what is bisu identity, it is actually proof that it cannot be detached from the fully identity. As I mentioned, it is kind of contingency of identity. So identity that you actually have the autonomy to identify yourself as not only be shrink into one definition, but you have this kind of provided space to be able to like expressing yourself to the new categorization that might come up later on. And I think it is very interesting. Thank you for your question, Thea. It is a lifelong decision. So once you've been chosen as a bisu, you have to lead a celibate life, and you have to hold this kind of responsibility to be a ritual leaders, and also you have to be in that ongoing process of learning about the Bugis culture, because everyone from around the world will search for you and trying to ask you about the knowledge, the indigenous knowledge, the indigenous wisdom regarding the existence of the bisu. I hope it answered your question. And I move to, I think it would be easier to answer Rena question. Rena, thank you for the insightful question. In terms of being Indo-boting or Indo-pengantin, it is not limited to the bisu. So if you go to South Sulawesi, where the bisu resides, there's also a business, a beautician business that led by Waria, that led by Chalabai. So I think being a bisu cannot say that it dominates the business of being the business of wedding business, because as I revert again to my question, my response to Thea, being bisu is chosen, and usually the Chalabai that have their wedding business, that ones follow a bisu. So if they want to separate from the business and they start their own wedding business, it's okay, it's fine. But one thing that distinguish bisu and another calabai, ordinary calabai, or like nowadays there's so many makeup artists or something like that, that they always stated that they have this kind thing of, it's called chening rara, or a spell that make the Bugis bride is way more beautiful than usual bride. So the ordinary makeup cannot provide it to you, but through a chening rara you will have that like flawless look as a Bugis bride. And also if you have a bisu in a wedding rituals, it kind of explains your social class in immediate environment. So as I mentioned that for a Bugis people, social class is very important. So to have a bisu in your wedding, it's clearly states your social class through your neighborhood and your in the immediate environment. I would add that it wouldn't say that daya tarik waria untuk menjadi bagian bisu, because then again, if you want to be bisu, you have to be chosen. You cannot choose, I want to be bisu, and then tomorrow you'll be a bisu. No, it's not like that. And leading me to the last question of Pak King. Thank you. It is interesting question actually, because I have so much in hand that I try to deliver, but maybe to put it briefly, bisu, it is only sere bisu. So it's the dances of bisu, the sere bisu, that acknowledged as a part of warisan budaya tak benda. And last gender, warisan budaya tak benda ya Pak Jade, so that it part of Kementerian Kebudayaan programs try to revitalize their culture by putting sere bisu as a part of warisan budaya tak benda, and it is already acknowledged. But surprisingly, when I think it is already acknowledged since 2020, so it was 2 years back. But it is ironic to see that even though they are acknowledged as a part of intangible culture, they are marginalized from the cultural practices in terms of cultural recognition. So there's a paradox here. In the practice, they are welcomed by the community, but in the structural, they are marginalized. So the structure won't recognize, won't give the recognition for them to have the autonomy in terms of inside the structure. And also another case that I found in Segiri, they try to put bola arajang, rumah pusaka, as a part of so they have this big geopark, geopark program, and the UNESCO, the UNESCO spokesperson said that actually you have to put bisu as a part of that geopark, not only the cars like Amaros, because it is the richness of your culture. You have to put the community in that term, in that cultural tourism. So since the statement of the spokesperson, they put this sign in front of Rumah Arajang within only 2 months, I think, because before November, October, September, I went there. The sign wasn't there, but in the November, I went back there to attend the Mapalili, the harvesting rituals. It was already there. So it is a sign that it is a part of geopark, and it is part of cultural heritage, and there's a explanation about the Rumah Arajang and the richness of our gender pluralism knowledge that plays in the our society. So something like that, that I see that this kind of repetition happen. General people acknowledge them so highly, but when we come to the structure, I think they don't have the voice to contesting in that space. Thank you, Paki,
Thank you. It's
for the very
interesting.
valuable question.
Okay, thank you. Maybe our 3 participants have any response to Kak Jessie's answers? Okay, from Rena, thank you, Kak. I get it. Maybe
Thank
as well as
you so much.
Okay, so it's really a nice discussion. There are so many questions that maybe Kak Jessie enjoy to answer it.
I really enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Okay, so actually, there are still many questions that maybe we can discuss regarding this topic, but we will go to the next agenda, which is closing because the time will be 6 p.m. soon. But before we close our discussion, so let me summarize our discussion for today. The first point is there are indigenous people in South Sulawesi named Bisu, and Bisu is a non-normative gender, neither a male or female, that become a sacred person on Bugis society, that become the medium between voting Langit and Lino, the people and the gods. And they are the religion leader in Bugis society. The second point is they are still rich, but become extinct nowadays regarding to a few factors, such as the impact of the official religion and the shift of their role in society, the decrease of their sacredness. And the third point is Bisu use virtual space to become a new contestation space now. So dalam bahasa Indonesia mungkin kesimpulannya ada suatu komunitas queer lokal di Sulawesi Selatan itu yang bernama Bisu yang tadi sudah kita bahas. Bisu ini tidak diklasifikasikan sebagaimana gender yang ada secara mainstream, tetapi mereka mewakili kelima gender yang ada di masyarakat Bugis, dan mereka adalah sosok yang sakral, sosok yang suci di masyarakat Bugis yang menjadi perantara antara voting Langit dan Lino atau dunia dengan yang maha kuasa. Yang kedua adalah mereka masih diakui di masyarakat hingga saat ini, tetapi fenomena yang ada mereka mulai langka karena beberapa faktor seperti pengaruh dari agama-agama yang ada secara resmi. Kemudian ada juga pergeseran makna mengenai sakralitas Bisu di masyarakat Bugis. Yang ketiga adalah Bisu saat ini menggunakan media virtual untuk menjadi tempat baru untuk berkontestasi dan mempertahankan eksistensi Bisu sebagai bagian dari kekayaan budaya masyarakat Bugis. Mungkin sekian beberapa poin yang bisa disimpulkan dari diskusi hari ini. And for that, I really want to appreciate all the participants for today that not only follow the discussion, but also already give many comments, many opinions, many questions. They are very, very interesting to Kak Jessie. So I hope that our topics for today will be we'll have next time. We will discuss it next time, and we will discuss it more than today, because it's really interesting. So thank you for the participants, thank you for the lectures, thank you for the researcher from Pusapdim UKSW, thank you for Kak Jessie, our speaker for today, and I hope that all of us always keep learning and that you do today. Thank you for your participation in this discussion, and see you on the other discussion from Pusapdim UKSW. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next
you.
discussion.
Thank you. Bye.
Ya, terima kasih UKSW 3000.
Terima kasih Kak Jessie, luar biasa.
Ini udah keluar Kak.
Keluar Kak?
Oh iya. Iya Kak, udah keluar. Oh sorry Kak, masih terhubung dengan YouTube nih Kak kita. Iya. Terima kasih ya BTSI.